Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about the infamous LS swap. So what we have here is a junkyard LS intake. This is from a 6-liter Chevy truck around 2001. So it's got the cable driven throttle body, and it's pretty much complete. The injectors and fuel rail is still on it, throttle body is still on it. I just started taking the throttle cable bracket off. So there's 3 bolts that holds the throttle cable bracket on, just like that. Now I've always wanted to do an LS swap, and a lot of the time swapping a truck motor into an older car or into a car, they say that you need the car intake because your hood clearance. So the truck intake is a little bit taller. The truck intake is also supposed to make more power, so I guess the shape of the runners, or the longer runners on the truck intake, it makes a little bit more power than the car intake, I guess. So the truck intake can be modified to fit. Now it might be tight clearances still, but you can. A lot of people shave these lugs and fins and all this stuff. A lot of people shave this off, and then they can manage to tuck it into whatever they're doing. So rather than spend $200 or $300 on an intake, I'm going to see if I can't shave some of this stuff off. Even just for practice. The fuel rail rides on over the top of the intake, so even if you shave it down, you only have so much clearance there with the fuel rail. And a lot of times the guys I see doing it, they're cutting holes into the intake, and then they have to plastic weld it. Like, they cut these side ones off here, and then they're left with a big hole that goes right in the intake. And then they have to get into welding and Bondo or fiberglass or something to seal that all up good. And some guys run boost in these LS motors, turbos and superchargers, and you don't want to have a weak intake, or you don't want to be cutting holes and having weak spots if you weld it back together, especially if you're running boost. And my thing is simplicity. So why cut these side lugs if you're trying to get hood clearance on top? I'm sure it looks better if you can cut that off and shave it smooth and weld it and go through all that. But I'm just going for fitment, as long as it fits and works and simple and cheap as possible. So most of what I do here is going to be hacksaw and maybe just a hacksaw blade. I've got a reciprocating saw, which seems to work like a sawzall, seems to work okay as long as you're careful. Like I said, I don't really want to do any welding if I don't have to. But the reciprocating saw runs so fast that it seems to heat up. The blade heats up and it actually melts the plastic a little bit, and then it clogs up the blade. So anyway, I'll probably just be using the hacksaw for most of it. I seen one guy did this, and he cut off that raised lug, so he kept these two here, these lower ones, and he cuts off the top one. The throttle bracket still fits, and these bolts here are down lower. They're down lower, so they're okay. They're almost level with the top. They're definitely lower than the fuel rail, so I think those two there are okay. I'm going to cut that one off. I'm going to cut that one off. I'll end up cutting this third lug off the bracket here, so I'll just have 2. I thought that was a good idea, and it's simple. So I'm going to cut all these tall ones off as close as possible. I'm not going to worry about getting like right tight to the top of the intake, because I can always sand it down later or grind it down later. Okay, so I worked on the intake a little bit today in my spare time, and I started making it smooth. I wasn't gonna do that. I wasn't gonna take all these fins out, but when I was using the hacksaw and cutting the tall lugs off, I made some marks, and they were kind of ugly, so I figured I'd just go and try to smooth it all out a little bit, and maybe it would look a little custom, a little more custom. These caps here, they're like glued on or fixed on from the factory. But if you take a screwdriver and pry hard enough, if you do it right, they'll just pop off. So I popped that off. Now I'm either gonna have to glue one on, because the other one had a vent, or it had a vacuum port in it. So either I'm gonna have to glue another one on, or smooth the whole thing and plastic weld it, or I could put a rubber grommet in there perhaps, and maybe I can do a low profile vacuum vacuum port or whatever. I'm not sure yet. I have to do something about that. I think the only reason why I popped it off, it was kind of low profile, but it was a little bit taller than the fuel rail. Otherwise I probably would have kept it. Maybe I could have shaved it down a little, I don't know. But we'll figure something out, and it's coming along. This thing here works really good. I've got it on a drill, and it takes the plastic down. If you hold it there for a second, it'll start melting through. So you kind of move slowly with it and keep moving, but don't move too fast. And it takes the plastic down pretty good. You can hold it on its face. It doesn't really heat up and melt too much, so it works pretty good. I think the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to take a little bit off the top of this throttle body here. I've seen one guy running this truck intake, and that's where his clearance issues were, right there. So I'm going to take a little bit off the top here, and I'm taking a little triangle chunk out of there. I think that's about 3/4 inches tall, that one. And I just noticed that there's this one here that runs the fuel rail, and I've got a couple. This is just a spare intake that I was practicing on because it was already broken. So I think this one here, maybe just a hair more if you count the flared part there. That one only sticks up 1/2 inch. This one sticks up 3/4 of an inch, and it's actually taller than the fuel rail. Oh goodness, it's actually taller than the fuel rail, that is. So since I've already snapped that one off, it's too tall anyway, I think. So maybe I can take one of these shallow ones, because it's only 1/2 inch tall, and it's not much taller than the fuel rail, just a hair. So maybe if I take a shallow one and some glue and glue a shallow one here, I've got 2 of these here and 2 holes here that need to be plugged, and I got this plastic welder adhesive, structural adhesive. So I'm gonna mix some of this up. I'm thinking I'll mix it up in a little cap like this, and then I'll take these and dunk them in it. I don't want to plug the hole, but I want to get it all the way around. I can't really do a bead all the way around because you have to mix it. So, well, I'm setting up a test piece here. I tested this stuff, plastic welder. So I've capped it, used it, mixed up 2 small batches. There's a test piece there that I'm just test gluing together. Hopefully we'll see after it sets up, we'll see maybe how strong it is. It's only overlapped about 3/4 of an inch perhaps. Anyway, I'll show you when it dries. And instead of waiting for the results to see how it turns out, I just went ahead and, like I said, I mixed up 2 small batches. So I glued this thing on and this thing on. So they're going to be different than the way the truck was originally. The truck was pointing up here, and it had one that pointed up here a little bit as well. So change both of those around. Go for a little more low profile. I don't think I'm gonna go plastic welding with any heat or anything like that. I'm just gonna use the adhesive plastic welder and just glue those on. I think I'll probably just call it a day unless I can get a car intake. I'm not really sure if a LS4 intake will work, but they might be easier to find. So I guess I'll just have to wait for this stuff to dry. You can see some evidence around the edges there. Yeah, so this one here used to look pretty much like that with all the ribs and stuff on it. And I made a short little vacuum line for the fuel regulator. I'm not even sure if I'm going to use these fuel rails because there's some stainless steel fuel rails on the other intake that I like better. So I glued these thingies on here and they seem to be holding pretty good. So yeah, I shortened up this line and made a custom short little line for the fuel rail. I might end up putting a stainless steel fuel rail on there, I don't know. But I low profiled the throttle bracket, so the throttle bracket's a little bit lower. I just shaved it down a little bit, the mounts. So I got rid of the third mount completely, and these 2 I shaved them down a little bit. Yeah, so it should clear under the hood of the car now, hopefully.